Hey everyone, welcome. It's Christina Johnson here, and I want to talk a little bit today about all of those healthy processed food options that we can now find really easily in the grocery store. And I just want to talk about whether or not they're as healthy as they seem, and then give you some guidelines on how to figure out which ones are the best to buy, and also like how to not let them stop you from losing weight or feeling really good. So just in general, I mean, the goal of clean eating is to eat more real foods and less processed food. And I'm not like a purist. I don't think we need to eat 100% real food and 0% processed food. But we do want to be eating most of our food that's real whole food. So food that is in its natural form, like meat or vegetables or fruit or nuts or seeds. And that is the goal of clean eating, to eat the majority of those real whole foods. And the purpose of doing that is because those foods are the foods that we were designed to be eating. Those are the foods that we were made to be consuming. And those foods have the nutrients that we need to be healthy and to feel good and to maintain a good weight for our body. So that is kind of the goal of clean eating. And now we can see that food manufacturers are kind of seeing this trend that people want to be eating healthier and want to have more clean products. And so there's a lot more processed food options out there that are healthier, that are better than the ones that we've had for a long time. And I do think that's a positive thing. I mean, you can find noodles and pasta that's made from quinoa or lentils or beans, or there are protein bars, all kinds of protein bars out there, or gluten-free crackers, dried apple chips, tortillas, or chips or crackers made from cauliflower or almond flour or cassava flour. And so I think it's great that we have these better options. And what I've also seen happen is that some of my clients notice that they're not losing weight like they thought they would. They're not having as much energy as they thought they would by switching to eating clean. And when we dig into it, oftentimes one of the culprits is that they're consuming too many of these processed foods that are healthier. So they're doing the work, they're trying to clean up their diet, they're making healthier swaps, but sometimes it's not getting them the results that they want. And so I think that's why we need to have this conversation about these processed foods that are marketed to us as healthy. So that's the question I want to answer today. I also have 4 kind of guidelines to give you that will help you when trying to figure out which processed foods to eat and how to do that so it doesn't stop you from losing weight or stop you from feeling really good. Okay, so before I dive into that, I want to just take a step back and just really briefly discuss the problem with processed food. So the reason why we want to be careful of processed food to begin with is a few different reasons. So first of all, the very act of processing the food, when you think about it, it has these real food ingredients like grains or vegetables or whatever, and they're processing it. So they're grinding that food down and they're heating it up. They're exposing it to air and to light. And what all that processing does is it destroys a lot of the naturally occurring nutrients. So the vitamins and the minerals and sometimes even fiber, depending on what's happening, and the oils in it, those can be pretty sensitive to the processing, and so they get destroyed or they get damaged. So we end up having these processed foods that really don't have the nutrients in them that they were meant to have. And that's why so much of our processed food is fortified with vitamins and minerals, because the natural ones were destroyed. So that's one issue with processed food, is it does become more deficient in nutrients. But then another issue is if you start reading the labels on processed food, I'm sure you might be aware of this, but sugar is added to almost everything. And even when things say sugar-free, well, they still might have artificial sweeteners in them, or they might have stevia or different alternatives like that. And so that's an issue. When we're constantly eating these things that have been sweetened a lot, we just get used to that really sweet taste and we just want more and more of it. Plus, all the added sugar does us absolutely no favors at all. So that's another issue with the processed foods. But then also another huge issue with processed foods is that oftentimes they're made from a flour. So if you think about it, like pasta is made from a flour, or crackers or chips are made from a flour. And when things are made from flour, it acts very similarly in your body as sugar does. So that flour, that product made from flour, is going to be digested very quickly by your body, and it's going to cause your blood sugar to spike, much like a food high in sugar would. So that's another issue with the processed food, is it's made from flour a lot of times and has sugar in it. It's going to disrupt your blood sugar and just make it harder to lose weight. So then we have to think about even the healthier foods that are out there now, the healthier processed food, like a pasta made from lentils or beans, or a cracker made from almond flour or cauliflower flour. It's still made from flour, and it often still has sugar in it. It's often still devoid of a lot of nutrients. So it's still not an ideal food. It's not, I would say it's not a super healthy food. It's not something that's going to fuel your body really well, or something that's going to give you like all the nutrients your body needs to feel good and to be healthy. But because, maybe it has less sugar, no sugar, or a better sugar alternative, it's not going to be as harmful as most of the other processed foods are either. And so what I think is, number one, that it's going to be really impossible in our modern society to avoid processed foods completely. So I don't think that needs to be the goal. We just need to learn how to incorporate them smartly, wisely. I don't know if smartly is a word. We need to incorporate them wisely so that we can still use them every now and then for convenience or just for enjoyment's sake, and not let them derail how we feel or our energy or how we're sleeping or our ability to lose weight. So I'm going to go over 4 guidelines to just kind of help you think through how to use some of these healthier processed foods. Because remember, kind of the quick answer, I guess, to the question is, are they really healthy? They're not as bad as a lot of typical processed foods, but they're not actually healthy. They're not going to give you the nutrients you need to be healthy. They're kind of, I would say, almost maybe more of a neutral kind of food. So the 4 guidelines. Number 1, when I'm working with my clients inside of Emerge, one of the principles that we're working towards is to eat about 80% or so of real whole foods, and then supplement about 20% of your diet with processed food. So that's one thing. If you are making your whole diet or half of your diet based on these healthier processed foods, like the healthier, lentil pasta, and then the cauliflower chips and the almond flour tortillas, if half of your diet is based on those kinds of food, then you're going to be missing out on a lot of important nutrients, and you're still getting a lot of that sugar and flour particularly. So aim to have about 80% of your food that you eat on a normal day be real whole foods, and then you can supplement about 20% of your diet with processed foods. The second guideline that I have is to choose your processed foods very carefully. So again, this is another like a whole audio lesson that I have in Emerge where we talk about how to read food labels, because there's very specific things to look at, and it's very different than the dieting way. Because I remember when I was dieting, I memorized all the calories and the grams of fat and things like that from the food label. But really the most important thing to look at is the ingredient list. So you want to choose foods that have a really clean ingredient list. You want to avoid things that have added sugar. And maybe every now and then if you have something with some added sugar, ideally it'll be one of the healthier alternatives, maybe stevia, monk fruit, things like that. And then you also want to be really careful of the processed foods you're buying and look at the oils that they're using. So a lot of the processed food use these really cheap oils that are highly inflammatory to the body. So things like vegetable oil, soybean oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, you don't want to be putting those oils in your body because they are highly inflammatory, and the fats make up every cell of, like, the wall of the cell of your body. And so every cell in your body is made up of these fats. We want to be filling our body with good, healthy fats to have healthy cells. That's going to be a foundation for health. Okay, the third guideline I have is to make these processed foods, the healthier processed food options, make them an exception in your diet versus an everyday occurrence. So this is another key principle of the Emerge method, is that we want to have this, healthy way of eating that we eat 80-90% of the time. We're fueling our body well. And then, because this isn't like a rigid diet, instead it's this healthy lifestyle that we're trying to follow every day, we need to be able to make some allowances. So we need to learn how to make some exceptions, how to eat for joy. And so part of your exceptions, part of your eating for joy might be to eat the cauliflower chips. I mean, for example, for me, I really do avoid processed foods the majority of the time, but I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago, my husband and I were gonna have a date night, but we were just gonna stay at home, so I decided we would make a fun meal. And so I decided we would make nachos, and so I bought cauliflower chips to use. I bought a grass-fed pasteurized cheese, which I normally don't eat cheese at all. And so that was one of my exceptions, was sure, I'm not gonna eat cauliflower chips every single day of the week, but to have it as, a fun night for an exception, then it's okay. So that's really how we want to think about all those healthier foods, the pastas, the crackers, the chips, the tortillas that are made from healthier ingredients. We don't need to avoid them completely, but let's really make sure they're not one of the foundation pieces of our diet, but they're something that we use as an exception or for joy eating. And then the fourth guideline I have for you is to be very careful of portion sizes when it comes to those foods in particular. So I'm not one that's going to preach calorie counting or weighing or measuring your food, but another one of the dangers of processed food is that it is so easy to overdo. I mean, let me know in the comments or just hit the like button if you know what I'm talking about, where you can eat a whole bag of popcorn, or you just keep eating chips or that ice cream. It's hard to stop. And so I think that's one of the things to just be very mindful of when you're eating any processed food, as even, the healthier ones, is we need to keep it to a reasonable portion size, especially things made from sugar or flour, because we want to avoid that big spike to our blood sugar. So we need to really keep the portion sizes in check on those types of things. Okay, so I guess to just kind of quickly sum it up, when it comes to processed foods is, one, yes, it is those foods made from like almond flour, cauliflower, lentils, beans, pasta, all of those processed foods. We need to recognize, one, that they still are processed foods. Two, they're still typically made from flour, so they are going to have an effect on your blood sugar. And then three, they are a better option, and so it's not like we have to avoid them completely, but try not to let them be a staple of your diet. So let me know if you have any questions at all about that. Just put it in the comments or send me a message. If you want help learning exactly how step-by-step to transition to a clean eating lifestyle, definitely send me a message and we can talk more about how I can help you do that. But thank you so much for watching today. Let me know if you have any questions about what I shared, and I will see you again next week. Bye for now.